a fight between Pac, Kenny, Omega. It's bound to be killer. The winner have to consider it will all be over quicker. Deliver the V trigger. It's picking up. Lucha Bros versus Young Bucks. Many have tried. None have outdone us.
Let's get ready to podcast.
None are above us.
Christopher Daniels, collectively known as SoCal Uncensored, or SCU. You are listening to the All Elite Podcast, and it is the worst podcast I've ever been on. SCU later.
Welcome back, All Elite family, to another exciting edition of the All Elite Podcast. I am your host, All Elite Andy, and as always, I am joined by your boy, All Elite Wrestling fan, anime nerd, Bitter Mark, our boy, All Elite AJ. AJ, how are things going?
Things are going good. Not much new. Just went to my doctor's appointments. Got my mental health in check. Doing good, man.
Happy to hear it, man. Good to hear. Glad everything is going well in the mental. I'm doing all right. I'm actually a little bit behind on this week's episode of Dynamite. I managed to catch the last hour and a half. I didn't catch the whole thing due to a meeting at work and things like that. Not a big deal. AJ was able to catch up on the things that I missed, and I did catch the sweet main event. There were a couple of sweet matches I do have to check out, but nonetheless, a great show, AJ. Another sweet Wednesday night's main event lineup to pick from, dude.
Oh, yeah.
Good night, you know what I mean?
Yeah, this is a great night. I really enjoyed this show. There were moments in this show where I was not into it, but the first couple matches, man, I really liked them.
Yeah, I mean,
in the main event.
I missed out on the first couple matches, but the last couple matches I was pretty into. Moxley and Darby Allin absolutely tore the house down.
Yeah.
It came in at 11 and a half minutes official, but before the match even began, they were destroying each other, so I'm not sure if there was, if that time counted into what you had or anything, but, it's interesting to see just the way this match was put together and the way they were able to do some of the hardcore stuff, but not totally go into that direction. Especially with them trying to steer away from that and that type of thing. So it was a really interesting way for them to do that, I think.
Yeah, that starts at bell time, so it is a little extra. But yeah, that match was fantastic. They killed each other. I thought it made Darby Allin look great, and we were talking about it, no matter what happens in this match, Darby Allin should come out looking great, and he did. And
yeah,
I think that's all I could ask for.
That was the biggest point. I think like you said, you hit the nail right on the head. We asked for Darby to come. We wanted basically both guys to get over from the match itself, and that's pretty much what it did. It established Moxley as a top star and Darby as a star in it of himself. So it's very cool to see that. A very great episode of Dynamite, a great main event of the show. Maybe not necessarily each of our Wednesday night's main event. You'll have to wait till the end for that. But AJ, go ahead and let's just start from the top. You caught the first two matches. Give us the rundown.
Well, we had Rey Fenix defeating Nick Jackson. That was about 12 minutes, and it was a great match. Like we talked about, these two are just so clean. They're so fast. Nothing went wrong in this match. This is, you know how WrestleManias or big shows will have a really good opener?
Right.
This was that. This was that match where the opener just killed it. And oh my God, you have to go back and watch this one.
Oh, I plan on it, dude. The time I spent talking about that match, that's why I'm bummed out I missed it. I wouldn't say that I'm necessarily mad because, like I said, I was just busy with work. Not a whole lot I could do about it. But this was one of the matches that I was looking forward to so much on the show, and a great way to open the card, especially when you have a pretty stacked card from top to bottom. I mean, the next match, did they even officially announce this one beforehand? Because this one
not at all.
If you just put that on paper with the rest of the card, you're like, damn, we've got a hell of a card even more. So
yeah.
Let's go ahead and jump into Britt Baker versus Hikaru Shida.
Now, I like this match. I saw people online saying they didn't, because there was I noticed one botch. People were saying there were botches in it. Maybe I need to go back and rewatch this one. But I like this match. I thought it was good. I thought it made Hikaru Shida look great. And Hikaru Shida won, which blew my mind because I saw this match okay, they're number one, number two in the rankings. We're going to have this basically be a number one contendership without saying it. But Hikaru Shida winning is not what I expected at all because everything led me to believe that it was going to be Britt Baker and Riho again. So I was amazed the fact that they put her over and the fact that Hikaru Shida and Riho are going to have a match, and those two have so much chemistry.
Did they officially announce that would be a match in the future?
No.
I mean, it does make sense, and I almost hope they'll announce it for next week. just because they're making that Chicago show a big deal, which is fair because those fans that are going out to that show the day before Thanksgiving, like you either live in Chicago or you're willing to travel like your Thanksgiving holiday just to spend it with AEW, which isn't a bad thing. If I had like the time and just not and money and all that to do something like that, that would be cool. But I just think that it would be a great way to add to that card, especially because Hikaru versus Riho is going to be a great match. I do plan on going back to watch this one too because I haven't really seen anything on it, but I believe that there could have been a couple missteps, and that really doesn't take much for Twitter to really jump down on something. But this match, man, I'm interested, and it makes sense. Britt losing to Hikaru, it's not a bad loss. Britt has a super established record. I talked about it on the last episode where she's like 7-3 or 7-2 or something like that. So she's doing so well that this loss means essentially nothing because, again, Hikaru was ranked right around her. Like, this sets up a great Hikaru versus Riho match, which Riho is going to have a great run because I don't really see Riho dropping unless it's to someone like Britt or Nyla. So a match against Hikaru is another great like notch on her record, which is going to be dude, that's sweet. The first women's championship run is just going to be badass because she's getting really stellar matches to defend her title on.
And I know there's people who aren't sold on Riho. I don't know how you couldn't be, though. Not only is she great, but she's over as all hell, and they've done such a good job of putting her over that really anybody she's with, I'm excited for the match.
Yeah, I don't understand how you couldn't really be sold on Riho. Especially, you can't really be disappointed on her winning and the way she wins because, like I said, I've mentioned, it's a lot of roll-ups, it's a lot of like surprise finishes, which makes sense with someone like Riho. How else does she pick up a lot of victories? But she still puts on a big fight and has great matches. And I think wonder what, I know that they're not really pushing necessarily love angle with Kenny and Riho, but they sort of haven't done much with those two since the first couple months where they really were pushing that kind of heavy, where now it just sort of seems like Michael Nakazawa and Kenny. And I know that's not they're not really pulling Riho away from him, but I would just like to see them do something to continue that. Remind everyone that these two are so special and important together because if at a point they're both champions, there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with that.
Yeah, I think one thing to note here is that there was no Awesome Kong on this show. This was essentially the only thing we saw from the women this week, and so that streak of Kong doing things every week and taking care or whatever was not seen here. And I'm guessing that's because Nyla wasn't on the card and they're building to Nyla and Kong. But it was a little weird to me that you having Kong do this thing every week and on the pay-per-view, and then she's just kind of gone.
Yeah, I didn't watch Dark from last night, so I have no idea if maybe there was something on there, so I don't want to... No? Okay, so yeah, nothing with her for this week, which I, again, wouldn't be surprised if then there is something for her on Dark this week. This week's Dark card, I haven't seen it all entirely, but just the one match announced before the show I thought was really interesting and cool, too. We'll jump to that at the end of the show, but... just closing up the Hikaru versus Britt Baker match. Again, not a match that I've seen, but a match that I'm excited for as a fan of AEW. If you've tuned in every week and sort of been following, you should know that Hikaru's really good, Britt's really good, both have really good matches, so this should be a fun match to watch. And could be another match that happens down the road. I could see Hikaru Shida getting a run as champion as well at some point, or Britt, so who knows?
Oh, yeah. For sure. They're both definitely potential champions. And people, like you said, down the line, I don't know how. Hikaru Shida is not the most over person right now, but this is a great way to do that because, honestly, Britt Baker she has more heat right now than Hikaru Shida. She has more of a character. She's more fleshed out. And so to give Hikaru Shida this push now is probably the right move because that way you're letting the fans know, hey, this is a person you need to be paying attention to.
Exactly, and you're right that she doesn't necessarily have much of a fleshed out character, but she's just super talented, and she's been someone fun to watch. Watch her get to do her first interview in American English and things like that. Those type of things have been really fun to see. It's cool to see her get that little bit of a push, like you said, but another person just sort of being elevated enough to be a contender for Riho and then lose to Riho, which is I like the way this is working.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do too.
And then from there we get the last thing that I actually missed live, and I kind of wish I would have seen this live because I did watch it on Twitter. Very interesting.
Yeah, the Dark Order vignette. a motivational style commercial-esque thing where I don't know, I liked it. You did see it, right? So I don't really know how to describe it. It was kind of Bo Dallas-esque, but it was more spooky and like with darker motives. And so I was like, okay, are we rebranding the Dark Order? Because they definitely need it.
Yeah, I think that it was interesting. I don't know how much, like, at first I was kind of like, this is pretty cool. And then I thought about it and thought about how much these gimmicks don't necessarily work as cool as I think they are. I think they're very much like more so a niche thing where people like us kind of are like, oh, that's cool. And maybe
Chikara
even like, which is why it might work in AEW because it's sort of that internet wrestling fan base, I think, who are into it. But I don't know. I mean, I didn't love it because it was the Dark Order, and it's funny. Shout out to our boy Joseph. The way he mentioned it, like, why would they give this cool, or he said cute, but why would they give this cool gimmick to the Dark Order rather than a different character or something? I do think that it fits the Dark Order, and it could be interesting. I thought the vignette was really well done, and then it's like, oh, it's just the Dark Order, like.
I get what you're saying. I want to see where it goes, but I can totally, like, in a week, I could even see myself just completely agreeing with you that, oh, it's the Dark Order, I don't care. But I want to see what they do, because if they come out and it's Dark Order status quo, I'm not going to care. But if they do something different or they change things up because they realize, hey, the Dark Order isn't getting over and people aren't connecting to it, then I'm all for it.
That's interesting to me because I kind of didn't even really look at it that way. I didn't think it could be much of a repackaging. I thought maybe it was just a vignette or promo to keep them fresh in people's minds and like try to explain exactly what they are, which is a little bit. I mean, it's interesting and it makes sense. They have the creepers, so they just bring people in and then make them adapt to what they are. I just don't know which character that works for in AEW, like, because this gimmick works when you have someone to try and pull in, a la Daniel Bryan being pulled into the Wyatt family, that type of thing, where you're trying to force someone to join you, the way they tried to do a little bit with Marco last week, but I don't think that works with Marco and the Jurassic Express. It's too much gimmick with all of those things intertwined, at least for right now. But I would be interested in maybe even someone like Hangman. Like, he's not with the Elite right now, and maybe they're trying to get him to join the Dark Order because he's constantly losing, and then eventually he just like considers it a little bit, has to make the decision, ends up turning on them. The same old story, you know what I mean? But give them someone to be that person that they're trying to pull in, which maybe this is like the groundwork for that. You never know. But I wouldn't mind seeing that. Even a Hangman versus Stu Grayson or even Evil Uno match could be interesting. Both men are talented in the Dark Order. It just hasn't been the best done so far. So I'm willing to give it time and see what this is going to become. But I just thought it was really well done. So I can't even say like what it was that rubbed me the wrong way. I think it's just, like I said, the Dark Order. I don't love them, and this gimmick being like this being their gimmick is like, why wasn't this it a long time ago?
Yeah. Instead of those black and white one-shot promos we got, this would have been much better.
Imagine like 20 seconds of this for months on like the Road 2s, and then you have them debut and destroy everyone and the lights go out, and some people in the crowd actually know who they are, and they haven't, and I get it, they probably didn't even have this all planned out at that point, so you can't blame them, but that is something just worth noting, I feel like.
No, definitely it is, and it would have been way better.
Yes, so from that point, we got the 12-man Dynamite Dozen Battle Royal. I did pop in literally as they were making their entrances for this match, so I did get to see it. But this was not the best way to be coming right into an episode of Dynamite. I feel like that was a downfall for me this week. Like, I feel like I would have been more excited about the whole show overall, coming into even this episode a little bit more excited about the main event. If this match didn't just it just didn't do it for me. I'm not going to spend the whole 15 minutes like shitting on it, because I know that's not what people want to hear. Some people enjoyed this. There are things that I'm going to say I really didn't like. Billy Gunn being in the match at all, I don't like. You already utilized him as a surprise. People already know that he's involved with your company. And
you're putting him over so hard.
Yeah, and he means nothing to be in this match, like, for no reason. He's literally the biggest guy in the match, so you do a big guy spot with him. but it's stupid because he's not Goldberg, he's not the Great Khali, he's not the
He's
Big
the ass
Show.
man. His if he was in this match, his purpose should have been doing that one Sunny Kiss spot and getting dumped out.
Yes, I would if they had to have him. If they had to feel like there needs to be a legend in every battle royal, which first of all didn't need to happen. I was never going into this being like, who's going to be the surprise entrant in the battle royal? Like, I knew that was never going to be a thing. So at least I didn't think so. And then lo and behold, coming in as the last entrant, or one of the last entrants, is Billy Gunn. Just not for me. That's one of the things I didn't love. Jimmy Havoc going crazy with a stapler and then being escorted out of the battle royal.
That was weird.
That was strange. Like, that felt really awkward. MJF, when MJF being one of the final two didn't rub me the wrong way. What was weird is the way it happened.
Yeah.
He wasn't actually eliminated. As many people know, you can go through the middle ropes, and that happened a million times in this match, which was really confusing too, because they were doing like a bunch of topes in the middle of a battle royal, and I get it, but it's like, fuck, man, it's really hard for me to keep track of what the hell is going on. But, so MJF pulls the leg out from Jungle Boy and ruins the chance of Jungle Boy versus Hangman, which was really confusing because, I mean, I get it, it's the same thing as when someone has to be the surprise winner of a battle royal and shit, but just the feel of it, you know what I mean? It really...
No, it really felt awkward, and it felt like it was out of nowhere, and it was kind of confusing, because at a moment, I even forgot, like, oh yeah, this is the last two win, because I had forgotten about MJF, and that made the surprise weirder.
Yes. I like you said, I had forgotten the last two win, so I didn't really see a Hangman versus Jungle Boy match coming. I thought this was going to be like a really that would have been a fun end to a battle royal where Hangman could have, I guess, won again, because that would have been confusing because Hangman just won a battle royal. But like those two at the final two, it's definitely not the caliber of Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels, but that I feel like they could have had a stellar 5 minutes finish off a battle royal, really cool match. Instead, MJF pulls the leg out from Jungle Boy, and literally, like you said, I forgot MJF was eliminated. And it wasn't even so much that I forgot; it was more so that I didn't even see him exit the match.
Now, I didn't either.
I might not have been paying attention; I might have missed it, but I did not see him exit the match. So because of that, it wasn't that I forgot; it was that when it was the final two, Jungle Boy and Hangman, I was like, "Oh shit! I guess MJF got eliminated." And I missed it. That was literally all it was. And then MJF pulls the leg out from Jungle Boy, and I was like, oh, okay. And it was what it was.
That's a good way to... AEW just cannot get battle royals right, man.
No. And, so I said I wasn't going to spend 15 minutes bitching about it. I spent about 3. But I do like MJF versus Hangman next week. I like that feud, that we've talked about it a little bit, how that could be one of the big, it doesn't have to be a solid feud right now, but every time they face off is going to be important to me. Every time they're in the same match is going to be important to me. And now next week they're doing that in a very important, what feels like a very important week, just because they're going back to Chicago, a place they held their last pay-per-view, the same arena, everything like that. So, I'm interested in the match that's coming. I don't love the ring gimmick at all. No, because they did not further explain it, so that means to me it's just
that's what I was hoping. I was hoping that, okay, we're finally going to get some explanation. They're going to talk about it more. Maybe it's a contendership. Nope, nothing.
And at this point, it makes no sense to be a contendership because their contenders are essentially established, where it's going to be Moxley and then whoever wins next week between Pac and Omega. To me, at least. I mean, that's a very easy way for me to look at it.
Yeah, that's what I would assume, too.
So this is different, I guess. We're getting... Hangman and MJF. But like you said, it doesn't really mean anything. There's not a whole lot of. It's just a ring.
Yeah,
it's just a ring. And when I saw MJF in the match, I was like, oh, like I told you, it was just going to be meant to be like a tool as a weapon. And then I also told you that Cody loves rings. So MJF is easily going to be the one to get this ring because MJF is feuding with Cody, and Cody was like, dude. And
it doesn't make any sense as a prop for Hangman.
Nope, it makes 100% sense as a prop for MJF, though. That's why when I saw him in the Battle Royal, I was like, yep, he won it. Easy. Like, it wasn't even a question to me. And that's why when it was Jungle Boy and Hangman at the end, I was like, holy shit, he got eliminated and I missed it. And then it was like, oh, okay. So, and I'm okay with that, and I'm okay with what they're trying to do in the story. It's just like, MJF literally could have just showed up with a ring. He literally could have just punched Cody with a ring, and I would have been like, okay.
Yep.
They didn't have to do a whole battle royal for it, but it's whatever. And like I said, easily. The thing that's interesting is, like I said, I see MJF winning, so that means another Hangman loss next week. So,
yeah, which is going to be interesting to see how his character progresses, because he's been just losing and losing. I mean, he did this battle royal, but he hasn't won it yet. Not really.
Yep, not technically. And the thing about this battle royal, and the thing about the match, I guess I should say, next week is very important to me in seeing how Hangman can pull a good match out of MJF. I think these two, the styles of them will do really well together. MJF's and the Hangman's like style leans really well into just the things that MJF are going to do. But I do think that it's important. Hangman should be able to pull a good match out of MJF, because these two are supposed to be like cornerstones going forward for the next 5 years. So these two need to have a good match. It doesn't need to be 5 stars, but it needs to be good.
Yeah, they need to tear the house down. I don't know if it needs to be the best match on the card, but it should definitely be one we're talking about.
Yes, one that we're excited to talk about. Something I'm excited to talk about, we have Chris Jericho coming out to give his surprise announcement, which I guess, honestly, this was interesting. I wouldn't say that I'm super excited to talk about this, but this was an interesting segment and an interesting way to build up to Jericho against Scorpio Sky. We have Jericho come out and announce that he's going to do a Thanksgiving celebration next week in Chicago, which is interesting. It made sense to me, because we're building up Chicago as this important thing. And before he can announce much more, SCU comes out and they just bait Jericho essentially into a match with Scorpio. They then bait him into the match being for the AEW Championship, which was funny, but really just
a weird way to set up a big match.
Yes, the way AJ put it was he got Bugs Bunnied into putting his championship on the line, which it makes all the sense in the world. Just ridiculous, silly. I don't know.
No, you're right. Because on one hand, I really liked the fact that we got Scorpio Sky and Jericho, and I liked it the most when Scorpio Sky dropped the funny gimmick and just got serious and said, "I'm gonna beat you. I've been waiting for 15 years for this opportunity, and I'm gonna take it." And I was like, "Okay, this is what I wanted to see." But I wish we didn't have to do all that. We could just say,
well,
I came out here with an announcement of my own.
What is? Yeah, I mean, that's the one way they could have done it. I think you're right, because what I was going to say is this is where not having an official authority figure kind of bites you in the ass, because you obviously want to set up Scorpio versus Jericho. It makes sense coming off of the roll-up win over Jericho, but you don't just want to have Scorpio come out and challenge Jericho, because it doesn't really make sense for Jericho to just be like, yeah, you're right, I'll give you a title shot. But without an authority figure, you can't just say, well, last week Scorpio pinned you, so you're going to get a champion. He's going to get a championship match. So they couldn't think of a better way to bait this in, so they just went full like gimmicky with it, which is that's what you did. That was your choice. I mean, and I don't blame them, because again, I'm thinking on the fly. They had as much time as they wanted to put into it. I think they could have put a little more time into thinking of a way for Sky to come out and be like, well, I beat you and da-da-da-da, and really make Sky sound better and everything. The one thing I really felt like they missed the boat on was Scorpio comes out, and I wanted him to say, like, that was the worst promo I ever listened to, and just, like, go into his whole spiel and then have Jericho cut it. Like, that could have been really fun. It wasn't a bad back and forth, but yeah, there was just, I didn't love the Bugs Bunny thing.
No,
and then after that,
either.
they got destroyed, so that was fine.
Yeah, that was good. It really was, though. The Inner Circle came out, they beat the shit out of SCU, and that was cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was an important piece to all of this, too. Jericho getting conned into a championship match and sort of maybe realizing it and feeling like he needs to exact his revenge and destroy everyone, and ends up laying the Judas effect on Scorpio Sky, so that was good. And they don't really, what was kind of weird to me is then after they're destroying everyone, Marco Stunt and Jungle Boy come out with Luchasaurus to make the save.
Yeah.
Which I don't really understand their relationship with this feud right now.
There is none.
They were just having an issue with the Dark Order last week. I thought maybe Private Party would come out and sort of even the odds, because that would have made a lot more sense with them having a match with Proud and Powerful later. But, yeah, I don't know. It was fine.
I didn't like that either. I didn't understand why they... I mean, I guess you needed to wrap it up some way, so they wrapped it up that way. And
you could have wrapped it up with that Judas effect, though.
I think so. The commentary excuse was that Luchasaurus had a match next, and so he, instead of his entrance, he did the right thing and came out and saved the day.
Okay. I guess that's fine, because I was literally just about to complain about the fact that he had a match right after this, and that was just kind of weird timing, but the fact that they mention it like that, like, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
I'll tell you right now, though, the superhero thing like that isn't going to work. It is not going to work. Not billing it that way. Like, it's the same way that there's problems with Ricochet and WWE because they're pushing it like a superhero. Like, Marvel is Marvel. You can't do that in wrestling, man. Like, so pushing it like, oh, he's just trying to save the day. Like, I don't think that will work for even the Jurassic Express. I think they've pushed it to that point with him pulling in Marco and Jungle Boy and saying like he's saving them and helping them or protecting them or whatever. That's fine, but you're going a little too much in the superhero realm where he's just gonna always run out and save someone. Like, that's really John Cena, and Cena didn't even do all that. So
yeah.
But from there, I mean, and we have to talk about, though, the close of this. We get a stare down with Jake Hager and Luchasaurus, which is hinting to some type of matchup between these two, which is sweet, because I was talking about how I'd like to see Luchasaurus get some type of run as a singles star, and then this looks like that could be it. Right after this match, he gets a singles match, or right after this beatdown, I should say, he gets a singles match with Peter Avalon, absolutely squashes Avalon in 30 seconds, quick, easy match. Which is great because we didn't need too much of Peter Avalon. And the thing about it is it felt like it all ran together with that previous segment, so it was good that it wasn't too long.
Yeah, and like you said, just to backtrack a little bit, I really like that it's Jake Hager and Luchasaurus, because I was under the impression that it would be Hager and Dustin Rhodes, because Dustin Rhodes is going to come back and want revenge or whatever. And he was even alluding that to on commentary on Dark. So whenever this happened, I was like, all right, I like this a lot more.
Yep, and that would be a very interesting match, and who knows, they could even throw it on next week's card. That's what I like about AEW so far, is they can just, like, that could be like a pay-per-view level match, but we don't have a pay-per-view lined up, so there's no reason you can't just throw it on TV next week. And they've sort of done that, and sort of it would line up with how they've booked things, really, because they line up with that little bit of a stare-down. Same thing with Proud and Powerful and Private Party last week. They had a stare-down match announced right after, so I could see that.
Yeah.
And speaking of Proud and Powerful and Private Party, they had a sweet match right after this squash. It ended up being about 15 minutes, a great match between these two, and Private Party once again picking up a surprise victory over a solid team. I don't know if I love the result. It makes sense and wasn't the worst way to do it, but it was a great match, so I can't really complain about the result. My biggest issue is Private Party just lost on Dark to the Best Friends, so this kind of messes me up.
My biggest issue was that pin that happened. That was supposed to be a 3 count, and then it was like the referee was going to count 3, and then he just turned around and started talking with Santana for no apparent reason, and I had no idea what was going on. The commentary didn't. They were saying, oh, he was not the legal man, but then he tagged in anyway, so he was the legal man, and I have no idea what that botch was. And after that, it threw me off the whole match. Up until that point, like you said, this was a fantastic match, but that botch really, like, it took me out of it, man.
One thing I will note is I kind of overlooked that botch, and when in the middle of these shows, I'm obviously taking or saving GIFs, uploading them onto Twitter and things like that. So that sometimes leads to me like missing things in the process. So I actually missed that botch, and I'm glad I did, I must say, because it really didn't mess up the flow of the match for me. Essentially, the match was way better for me because I did miss it. I didn't even know about it until you mentioned it. I had seen something about a botch on Twitter. So that explains it, and and that makes sense that would really pull someone out of a match. Like I said, I just had the benefit of missing it. So to me, solid match. Nick Jackson ends up getting involved and grabbing the slapjack out of Santana's hands. Isaiah Cassidy ends up battling back, and they hit the gin and juice to pick up the victory. And what was a fun match. Like, again, if you take out the botch, I guess. If you have the botch, I could definitely understand that match being, like, tainted a lot. Post-match, we have Sammy Guevara. He arrives to attack Nick Jackson, but Dustin Rhodes makes a save and destroys Sammy G. So maybe, I mean, I assume we're going to get something with that, just because Dustin he's cut a couple promos on Sammy, like recording and vlogging his beatdown. So I imagine that's where we're alluding to.
Yeah, I think we're headed to Dustin and Sammy, which would be good, and it would be good for Sammy to wrestle with somebody who has more experience.
And it's still a name to beat, you know what I mean? That's how I look at a lot of matches for guys like Sammy and Darby and these younger guys who have a chance to either get like primetime showings with guys like Cody, or they face someone like Dustin and can get a good win, or even like a Shawn Spears, a good win over him. That's where I think they've done a good job with Spears. Like, we didn't mention that part, actually, of the Battle Royal. He got involved and took out Joey Janela, which I don't love because I had preferred the way that we thought the storyline was going to go, with Spears wanting nothing to do with Janela, but instead costing Janela the Battle Royal, which essentially will set up a match, you'd have to assume.
Yeah, that definitely took me by surprise, too. I also forgot to mention that. And I also didn't like the fact that they did it on commercial and then replayed it.
Yeah, that was something I had noticed and was kind of like, oh, that sucks. Like, it wasn't the end of the world, but it was a little bit unfortunate, you know?
Yeah.
But again, Spears is just related to Dustin in the sense that they've done a good job at putting these guys over to make names for other people.
Yeah, absolutely, and they're doing a great job of that.
Yep, and then they just did a quick rundown of what we've got set for next week. We've got Adam Page versus MJF. Pac versus Kenny Omega, Chris Jericho versus Scorpio Sky, and the return of Cody. So that should be great. Cody's absence has been a little bit noticeable. It's not the end of the world that he hasn't had a match or anything on Dynamite, but he is definitely one of the stars of the show. So without him, it's noticeable, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
From there, we get Kenny Omega. He does a quick video talking about just basically a quick promo hyping up his match with Pac, saying that he lost to Pac at All Out. And now he gets a chance at Revenge and Redemption next week, which is interesting. Like, I didn't really notice it, but him mentioning it, that it was the rematch from All Out, and they're doing it again in Chicago. Pac probably going to lose, give his win back to Kenny, which is fine. It's not your typical 50-50 booking where it happens the next day. It's a little bit months out, so I'm not going to say it's the end of the world, but it is definitely, like, feeling that way. And it's just because both guys are so high profile that you recognize it, you know?
No, it's definitely a 50-50 vibe. And like you said, it's not as bad as All That, but they've done 50-50 booking like one time, right? I can forgive them. And it's not WWE levels of terrible.
Mm-hmm. And it just it's inevitable in cases where you just have to have people face up. And literally, for all we know, Pac could win again next week. It would once again be a big surprise, a shock to me, but not that big because, again, I feel like we'll talk about the main event again a little bit, but Moxley picking up the victory, I feel like he's someone who's essentially in line for a title match, and both Pac or Omega could face Moxley in a number one contenders match in my mind. So that being said, anyone could win that match. I'm not saying that it's a definite Omega win, but I think Omega's done enough losing. I think this promo was essentially the end of that. Even it wasn't like a killer promo or anything. It was just sort of like Kenny calmly stating that shit is done. Like, hopefully. And I could be totally wrong. This could have just been a promo of him continuing his shit. But to me, I'm hoping it was him saying it's over and he has a chance to now beat Pac and just be done with it. But what could be interesting is if he loses and just doubles down on crazy.
Oh, yeah. I would love broken crazy Kenny Omega just going loose cannon. And like you said, because not only on this, but on Being the Elite, we keep alluding to the fact that he's all... Not even that he's crazy, but he doesn't like have an identity since like leaving New Japan. Like he doesn't know who he is, and he doesn't know what's wrong with him, and he doesn't know what's going on with like, for lack of a better word, his character. Because he's not the cleaner, and he's not the 5-star Meltzer guy anymore. So who is he?
He even said it in the promo, essentially, where he's like, I'm not really a promo guy. And I was like, well, I wouldn't even say that. I mean, I wouldn't say that he is like a punk or anything, but he's never been, to me, a bad promo. I didn't love the way he gave his promos in Japan necessarily, but everything he's done in America, and like his promos on Moxley were killer. So to me, like it's not like I was mad at the promo, but again, the promo just to me felt like hopefully we're done with the bullshit. But then again, he finishes it off with Michael Nakazawa putting like very small weights on only one side of his bench press. So maybe not. Maybe the psycho is still.
Maybe we're just getting started.
You never know. And again, if that's the case, I would expect maybe a Pac victory next week instead.
Yeah, I think that might happen.
Who knows? Which is good. It's nice that it leaves it up in the air.
I love the fact that with AEW, I don't know who's going to win most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, even the main event, Moxley versus Darby, I didn't know who was going to win. I had a strong feeling Moxley would win. I always have they've done so well with Darby that if this happened as one of the first matches, I wouldn't have that feeling. But they've done a good job with both Moxley and Darby at giving you the feeling that Moxley could lose and that Darby could win. Moxley, he's never really lost in AEW he just hasn't. So that's the thing. It's interesting to note that he hasn't lost, but every time he's had a match, I've given him the option that it could happen, essentially. Maybe not some of his squash matches, because I think he might have had one with the Librarian or someone like that, but this match against Darby, the match against Joey in that unsanctioned match, like I didn't think it would happen that Joey would lose, or Joey would win, I should say, but you never know. So they've done a good job at leaving that possibility, and this match just it left the possibility a couple times where Darby was really getting hot and things were getting really good. The second he went for the coffin drop and dropped into the rear naked choke, though, I knew it was over.
That was over.
He was a great
finish.
And he just exhausted all of his attempts at this point. I knew this wouldn't be one of those matches where he did like 7 coffin drops. And I knew that Moxley catching him in the first one meant it was over from there. And the nice thing about it is it always leaves the option for another match, but they didn't have to do the whole cliche like Moxley kills him and like lifts him up and shakes his hand shit.
Yeah, I'm glad they didn't do the Taker Hardy thing, because it's not that at all. In fact, I wouldn't want Darby Allin to shake his hand, because
Darby should flip him off and like slap his hand away, if anything, which it would be great if Moxley's just not that person either. He shouldn't be the one lifting him up. So that's why it all worked out so well, and the finish was sick.
It was awesome. It was perfect.
Darby with an avalanche Death Rider literally kills Darby, I swear. Like, what was it? JR said he broke his neck, or Schiavone, one of them. And I was like, holy shit. Like, you know he looks like he's damn near dead, so who knows? Like, it was a hell of a finish, though. Great match between these two. A great way to continue establishing Darby as a legit like top contender in the company. He's the reason I feel like so strongly they should establish some type of secondary title, and why I wish the ring thing wasn't even a thing. Why I wish they had just, if they wanted MJF to have a ring, or whoever to have a ring, like just bring it out, because who the fuck cares? You're rich, you could just buy a ring. And then do something to establish a secondary title to give me like a reason to think Darby can have something attainable that he could chase. Not to say that he couldn't be a top guy. It's just there's a lot of guys in that line right now who need to hold the title. That's the only downfall maybe to Jericho being champion, is I know Omega has to hold it soon, so it makes me really get the vibe that, and I know Pac has to hold it. Like there's just so many people in that crowded realm that Darby. Glad he got the opportunity in the past, but it still seems like a far off thing at this point.
Yeah, it is a far off thing, and you're dead on that's the reason we need a title, and whether that's going to be in like an Intercontinental title or it's going to be a TV title like they were talking about, whatever it is, they need to get the ball rolling on that. And I don't expect it until next year, which is fine. But wouldn't that be a great thing to announce on the anniversary or homecoming show?
Yeah, and I'm not saying they need to rush it or like it's killing them right now. It's just like they've done so good at making a couple other people stars that they need to have something worthy of chasing. And who knows, maybe just another match with Moxley will be what Darby will be chasing, because that would make sense to me, even in storylines perspective, where sort of like the Shawn Spears thing where Darby's like, I want you again, and Moxley's like, no, I literally just killed you. Like, there's no point. And Darby just has to keep killing himself in front of Moxley before Moxley finally gives in. That would be an interesting way to do it, but I would just like to see something for some of these guys who are really starting to make a name for themselves, something for them to chase. I wouldn't even want it to be something that goes directly to like a Hangman or an MJF. Let those two sort of be like your bottom line for main eventers who could be champion, and sort of like world champion, and let the guys all below them fight for that mid-level title for right now. You know what I mean? Just because I
totally know what you mean.
I think it would be bad for a guy like Hangman to be a mid-card champion right now, because it's almost saying like this is his ceiling. Whereas if you let him keep thriving and eventually get another world championship shot, it's much more believable than him. I mean, and that's not to say Hangman wouldn't be a fine like mid-level champion, especially if it's established as like a upper mid-card intercontinental title type of championship. So there's a lot they could do with it, but I feel like right now a mid-card title is what they need. Something like the open weight, and make it more prestigious than the open weight, but something in that tier. Like, you're not super main event, but you're someone who we're looking to push down the line.
I totally agree. I think it would just, like you said, you have so many guys on the roster because they've done such a good job of getting these people you don't know over that you really need to introduce that title. And like you said, don't rush it, but don't go slow on it either, because it's something where these guys are getting over. You've done the job, and now it's time to put them somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. So, not a bad show at all. One of the better Dynamites, I think, especially if I had the opportunity to watch it from top to bottom, because there really wasn't a lot to even pick apart on it. The only thing that I would really say was a downside would have been the Dynamite does in Battle Royal, which again wasn't bad because it establishes a wicked good match for next week, or a match at least with good potential for next week. Also interesting, like one thing I want to note as I scroll through this card is it's they've toned back on the tag team matches every week. Like there is still always one at least, but in a 5-match card they're not doing 2 or 3 every show, which is good.
I agree.
But then, which I say that to say they can always get back into that for a couple more weeks and then get out of that for a couple more weeks as storylines need.
And it was refreshing as all hell to see Nick Jackson and Rey Fenix in singles competition. Like, my God, I really hadn't even considered them facing off one-on-one. And when they did, it was like, when they announced it, I was immediately excited.
And the thing about that match is it sets the tone for the rest of the division. Like, no one can be like, I don't do singles matches, because literally the top 2 tag teams in that division worked singles matches, and they're not even necessarily the singles guys. Pentagon is someone I think you'd view more as the singles guy from them too. Neither of the Young Bucks have really been singles guys, so it's cool to see them doing this type of thing. And like I said, this is absolutely a match I'm going to check out. Just because it's one I was so excited about. And these two are so great and so talented that I think that this is important for AEW to continue to do matches like this, singles matches between 2 competitors in tag teams that might be feuding or on and off feuding. Like, the thing about this match is we sat there and complained for months about the Young Bucks versus the Lucha Brothers, but then this match was announced and we were like, hell yeah.
Totally different.
Yeah, so I think that that's a good way to do it. I liked seeing Pentagon in the 12-man Dynamite Dozen Battle Royal. He wasn't really featured much, but he did get an opportunity as a singles as well, so something else I wanted to note.
Yeah.
Overall, though, like I said, a good show. What do you think was your match of the night, your Wednesday night's main event?
Well, on note of what we're talking about, it's got to be Nick Jackson and Rey Fenix for me. That match, if I had to tell anybody to watch a match on this show, I would be telling them to watch that. Like I'm telling you, you got to watch that match.
Hell yeah, man. I mean, I'm going to have to give it a shot and live up to the name of the show. I'm going to check it out right after we're done. But for me, obviously missing out on that match, not really getting to see it, my personal match of the night is probably Moxley versus Darby. There is definitely the part of me that wants to say Private Party versus Proud and Powerful, but I don't want to say that's the match someone should go and check out when there's a big botch in it that even I didn't see, so I'm just setting you up for failure. So with all that said, easily Moxley versus Darby, a great singles match. And check out the first couple minutes beforehand where they're destroying each other too, because that was really awesome. Darby's entrance too, if for no other reason, check that out. Like that was almost like it wasn't as produced as a WrestleMania level entrance, but it almost was with the whole like he literally went to a concert and crowd surfed in a Moxley body bag.
That was sick.
It was sick as fuck, and it was a well done thing and something that I was excited to see Darby really get a like that type of shit is what makes someone a star. That's good shit. That's good shit.
That is good shit.
Because entrances, things like that are what help someone be different and stand out. And not only did he get carried out in the body bag, he pops out with the skateboard as usual and skateboards down to the ring, which is something else that makes him stand out. So that Darby is one guy that they've done a phenomenal job with. My girlfriend, who doesn't even watch wrestling, was like on the side, and the second his theme came on and everything was going on, she was like tuned in for a solid 5 minutes, and then she was out. Like his whole entrance, she was in, and then that was about it. Probably the most tuned in she was in Dynamite for like a month. So
speaking of, there was like 2 girls with Darby Allin face paint on. Like he is so over with the girls right now.
Yep. So it is nice to see again. Like we've talked about it probably for 10 minutes now, but they've done a good job at putting over different people that we weren't like. If you asked me a year ago if I would think that Darby would be one of my favorite wrestlers, I would probably say no. I didn't love Darby and Evolve. Apparently Darby didn't love Darby and Evolve, so it may like AEW giving him this freedom has been great. I wouldn't be surprised if someone said like he produced and did that whole entrance basically by himself, like the whole video, because that's kind of what he alluded to. Not necessarily that he does everything himself, but that he has the creative freedom to do the things that he wants to do in AEW, and that's what's helping him become such a success.
Absolutely.
Let's see. Is there anything else on the card or on the show that you want to get to before we wrap things up?
Not that I can think of. Did you want to go through the card for Dark?
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know it. I was wondering if you did.
Wow, brother. For next week's Dark?
Yeah.
All right, give me a second. Oh, this is actually a pretty interesting card. So, first match on the card, we have Pentagon Jr. versus Trent. Thoughts on that off the top?
That's going to be crazy. Like we were just talking about tag team wrestlers in singles competition. I'm excited for that.
Yes. Pentagon in singles competition I'm excited for. Trent as well. Trent is someone that Tony Khan himself has been noted to like talk about and say that he has a lot of faith in thinking that Trent can be something special, and that's cool to me because I've always been a big Trent fan ever since like even way back for literally no reason other than just
in the
him
Dude
being
Buster
him.
days.
Yeah, dude. So an interesting match there. Excited to see that one. They also had Leva Bates versus Awesome Kong. So your girl you were talking about, Awesome Kong, probably gonna do the job to Leva Bates. So there goes that run.
Yeah, and it's good that they have her on because, like I said, no notice of her on the show, so it's good that they're going to have her on Dark.
Yeah, exactly. Very important to keep her involved in what's going on.
Yeah.
Another match that happened, Shauna versus Big Swole. Noted that the crowd was not very loud for this one, which is understandable. Both of these women very new to the AEW audience, but this is the platform for it. If you're going to do it, it's got to be on Dark. Hopefully it'll be a solid match. I'm going to tune into it, so we'll have a lot more to say about it probably next Wednesday when we actually tune into that episode of Dark. But I think it's worth noting that it makes sense the crowd would be quiet, and I just wonder how they'll handle that for an episode of Dark if maybe it doesn't make the cut.
It's possible. If they're that quiet, then maybe. Because I don't think AEW are the guys who are going to pipe in cheers.
No, so it kind of just comes down to if it's a solid match. If it is a solid match, I think they'll run with it despite the quiet crowd. But if it's not, then they might just cut it out if there's a lot or just one too many botches. And then in a match that they announced before Dynamite this week, they had announced Kenny Omega taking on Jack Evans for the AAA Mega Championship. That one should be dope. Jack Evans can go, Omega can go, so both men obviously going to put on a show for the AAA Mega Championship. And I'm glad that they haven't really shoved that championship down our throat on AEW. It hasn't been super important, but it will be featured on a show, but not their main show because it all just kind of works. It all makes sense to me. So, but it doesn't feel it doesn't feel like a B show, B title match because it is Omega of all people. So, and Jack Evans, of course, makes sense and gives that credibility to you never know what could happen because he is a AAA guy. So
yeah, he's a AAA dude.
A shocker upset would be a shocker upset, but you never know.
That's a match that could easily be the main event for our Wednesday night main event because they're just both so good.
Exactly. So that'll be a fun one to check out next week. I do also want to note that we just have a lot of fun matches to check out next week. We kind of ran through it all earlier, but Chris Jericho versus Scorpio Sky for the AEW Championship, Kenny Omega versus Pac, and Hangman Page versus MJF already announced. Like, this is what we have asked for, and we kind of harped on it a lot in our earlier episodes, so I'm not going to spend forever on it, but we are getting, again, more established cards going into each week, which is what I love. That's the one of my biggest... Not
just established cards, but stacked cards.
Yes, and that's what next week's show definitely feels like, honestly. Scorpio Sky is someone that they've been pushing up to get that potential title shot. Here it is. Omega versus Pac is literally a pay-per-view match. And then Hangman versus MJF, if it's a good match, it'll be just that. It could have been a pay-per-view match because it depends on the quality, literally. And if they built up a feud with it, it would have made sense. So that'll be a fun one, too. And who knows, that could lead to Hangman versus Wardlow down the line if just Wardlow happens to get involved.
Ah, I didn't even think about that. Yeah,
gives Hangman another chance to make an unestablished guy look good. That's what I want to see from Hangman the most. If he's going to be an ace in this company, he's got to be able to work with some of the people who aren't the best. Because I know that Omega or Jericho or Pac or even Moxley, well, maybe not Moxley, but those three easily could have a good match with Wardlow. I think Moxley would let Wardlow throw him around and beat the shit out of him, so he could also have a good match with someone like Wardlow. So, that's what's going to be important if you're going to be the top guy, is if you can make, stars, kind of. Because all of those guys could have a great match with Darby. That's the difference. I think that Darby is not necessarily in that realm to be having matches and make other people look good, but he can be having good matches.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah.
Next week is definitely going. I mean, you said that one match could have been Omega versus Evans could be the Wednesday night's main event next week. But there's so much next week, dude.
So much. It's gonna be really hard to pick next week.
Yep. So that's a lot to look forward to. Excited there, but doesn't look like we got much else to say. AJ, you covered everything for this week's episode. You want to talk about?
Yep, I think I did.
Alrighty, then go ahead and plug your social media.
You can follow me on Twitter at BigMatchAJ, and you can follow me on Instagram at AJTheFitzy.
And as always, you can follow the podcast on Twitter at All Elite Podcast. You can follow us on Instagram at All Elite Everything. You can also check us out on Facebook at Facebook.com/All Elite Podcast, All Elite Pod. And you can check me out on Twitter at All Elite Andy. As always, thank you everyone for tuning in. Big shout out to all of our YouTube viewers, any of our Buzzsprout, Spotify, iTunes, all of those happy things. Thank you for tuning in and listening to us talk all things Elite every week. That's everything for this week. Until next time, see ya.
Bye-bye.